Welcome to episode 2 of the Kedusha of Shabbat. We will continue the theme we started with trying to understand in which aspects is Shabbat like me'ein olam haba, in which tangible ways does it share olam haba. But we will see when we understand how Shabbat is me'ein olam haba, it's not just so that we can properly experience Shabbat in this world, maximize our experience. Rather, when we know what is Shabbat, we really thereby earn olam haba. The pasuk we say in Kiddush, "V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabat, lasot et hashabat ledorotam berit olam." And they, b'nei Yisrael, should keep the Shabbat, lasot et hashabat, to make the Shabbat ledorotam for generations. What does the phrase in the middle of this pasuk mean? To make the Shabbat. They should keep the Shabbat, lasot, to make the Shabbat. The Ohr Chaim HaKadosh explains, as we see in Tehillim Tzadibet, that Shabbat is a reference also to olam haba. So if we use his lexicon, he says, change in the pasuk the word Shabbat to olam haba, because we see from Tehillim that Shabbat is interchanged with olam haba. So the Torah is teaching us as follows in the pasuk: we should keep Shabbat. Why? Lasot et hashabat. This Shabbat is a reference to the Shabbat of the future. It's a reference to olam haba. How do we ensure we will merit olam haba? By upholding Shabbat we have in our world. The word after in the pasuk is ledorotam, for generations. That word is coming to tell us what type of Shabbat has just been said beforehand. This is a Shabbat ledorotam. This is a Shabbat which will be for generations, which will be forever. That is an allusion to the Shabbat of the future, to olam haba. And then the pasuk concludes that this is a covenant made between us and Hashem, that those who keep Shabbat, we will inherit olam haba, an eternal world. This Ohr Chaim is teaching us a very profound message, that we determine our olam haba commensurate to how much we safeguard and we honor the Shabbat. The more we learn and understand what is Shabbat, and thereby know how to use Shabbat properly, not only will it change our temporary Shabbat in this world, but it will even impact our Shabbat of eternity. The only way to experience Shabbat in the future is already to have a connection to Shabbat in this world. Hence, these 2 days of Shabbat have to be intrinsically connected so that it can be true that we are able to get the Shabbat of the future by observing the Shabbat in this world. And the Sforno, one of the classic early commentators on the Chumash, he preceded the Ohr Chaim, he succinctly understands the pasuk in the same vein. He says on the pasuk, and Bnei Yisrael should keep the Shabbat. He says that's a reference to Shabbat in this world. Lasot et hashabat, he says it's a reference to the Shabbat of olam haba. We make our olam haba based on how we observe Shabbat. Chazal teach us, Gemara in Masechet Shabbat on page Yud Amud Bet 10b, that Hashem said to Moshe, I have a gift in my hidden chambers and I want to give it to you. That gift is called Shabbat. There is an emphasis made in this sentence that this gift, Shabbat, its original location is in Hashem's hidden chambers. This is a reference that Shabbat is from a higher, it's from a more spiritual realm. Hashem had to extract it from this loftier place in order to give it to us in this world. Even though we perceive the main aspects of Shabbat belong to this world, what we have is just the form Shabbat takes in this physical lower world. But the primary Shabbat, the real Shabbat, that is set aside for when we will achieve this, when we are in a higher, a loftier state, when we can really then enter Hashem's hidden chambers and really experience the real Shabbat. This Gemara, Chazal on this Gemara says, what is the source to know that this is a gift given from Hashem? And we learn it from the pasuk that says, Ledat you should know, Ki ani Hashem mekadishchem, that I am your God who sanctifies you. The Sfat Emet, he explains, Hashem gave us the mitzvot, but he also had to provide us then with the tools and the means by which we can accept the mitzvot. Similarly, Hashem has to give us the means to prepare us for olam haba. Olam haba is the ultimate form of knowing Hashem. When we come to olam haba, we will understand, we will know, we will be with Hashem and know who is Hashem. So how do we prepare for that? How do we prepare to enter in a world knowing what is Hashem? So says the Sfat Emet, Shabbat is how we prepare for olam haba. And that is what Chazal are learning from this pasuk. Ledat ki ani Hashem, to know that I am Hashem. In order to reach this perfect state of knowledge of what really is Hashem, therefore Hashem had to give us this gift, which is just a vestige of this knowledge of Hashem. It's a trace of the knowledge of Hashem. And that's why Hashem had to give us Shabbat in this state, so that we can prepare ourselves appropriately, so that when we go into olam haba, we get a full understanding of what is Hashem. We would have prepared ourselves. And this same Gemara continues and tells us in which aspect is the gift of Hashem. And the Gemara explains that Hashem here was telling us the reward for those who keep the mitzvot. And the Maral asks a simple question. If Hashem was revealing exclusively the reward in the future for the mitzvah of Shabbat, then why was he singling out specifically Shabbat of all other mitzvot? All the rewards for all the mitzvot, with no exception, are all in the future. They're all in the world after this world. So why is the pasuk being singled out, the mitzvah of Shabbat being singled out, as that's the reward that Hashem wanted to reveal to us, that He was telling us that we have a reward for this mitzvah in the future? And the Maharal gives a very important distinction. The reward for every mitzvah in the future is the result of the fulfillment of the mitzvah. We fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin, we are promised reward in the world to come. There's the mitzvah in this world and there's the reward in the future. But the reward is not the same thing as the mitzvah. They're two distinct things. The very gift of Shabbat is the giving of olam haba. It's not just there is a reward as a result of us fulfilling the mitzvah of Shabbat. The future of Shabbat, of olam haba, is what Shabbat is in essence. And that is why Hashem had to inform us of the reward awaiting those who uphold Shabbat. Because that's directly telling us what is the nature of this mitzvah. Hashem wasn't telling us the consequence of us keeping it. Hashem was telling us, what is this mitzvah? This mitzvah of Shabbat is olam haba. All other mitzvot, the reward Hashem didn't tell us. Hashem needed to tell us what we need to do in this world, and those are the acts of the mitzvah. But Shabbat had to be singled out, because to know what is Shabbat, Hashem had to tell us what is olam haba. It's not just the reward, it is in essence what is Shabbat. And we can give a source to this idea in Chazal. It puts all of these ideas together. The Medrash says, commenting on the pasuk, that they raised Shabbat. The Medrash teaches us that via upholding the Torah and the mitzvot of Shabbat, Klal Yisrael merited to inherit olam haba. And olam haba, says the Medrash, which is entirely Shabbat. And the Medrash learns this from Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. Keeping other mitzvot, that gives us a reward in Gan Eden, which is the olam ha-neshamot, the world where our neshamot are. But from this Chazal, we see that a direct consequence of us keeping Shabbat in this world, that it builds the olam haba that's awaiting us. The Shlah HaKadosh explains Zachor v'Shamor, the two phrases that we find about Shabbat. What do these two phrases connote? Zachor connotes remembering. Zachor means to remember. Remember Shabbat. Remember Shabbat, though in a way that it brings one to doing. Remember it, thereby you'll be doing more on Shabbat. Shamor, he says, it alludes to olam haba. By remembering Shabbat, we're thereby awaiting the future of olam haba. How do we yearn and how do we await for olam haba? By remembering Shabbat. The way you yearn, says the Shlah, for olam haba is by being shomer Shabbat. By observing the Shabbat, you're yearning for olam haba. We understand now why. Because if Shabbat is the microcosm of olam haba, and we uphold Shabbat, we're yearning because we're creating our olam haba. This is beautiful perspective that gives us the holiness of really what are we doing? We're trying to Vishamru b'nei Israel, we all uphold Shabbat, but why? Lasot et hashabat. Which Shabbat? The Shabbat of olam haba. Bezrat Hashem will take the messages, increase our observance of Shabbat, and thereby create and make the Shabbat of olam haba, which will be awaiting us in the future.